In the rapidly escalating tensions between Iran and Israel, the world is once again watching the Middle East with deep concern as new developments suggest that the conflict could move beyond covert operations and proxy battles into a much larger geopolitical crisis, especially after the controversial revenge speech attributed to Mojtaba Khamenei, the influential son of Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei, who reportedly warned that any continued aggression against Iran or its allies would trigger consequences that could reshape the balance of power in the region. And as analysts dissect the meaning behind these remarks, many experts believe the statement was not simply rhetorical, but part of a broader strategic message directed toward Israel, the United States, and regional allies, signaling that Tehran may be preparing for a new phase of confrontation that could involve economic pressure, cyber warfare, proxy conflicts, and potentially the disruption of one of the most important energy corridors on Earth, the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow maritime passage between Iran and Oman through which nearly a fifth of the world's oil supply passes every single day, making it one of the most critical choke points in the global energy market. And if tensions continue to rise, the possibility that Iran might threaten or restrict shipping through this route has already triggered alarm among international markets, shipping companies, and global governments, because even a temporary disruption could send oil prices soaring and spark economic shockwaves far beyond the Middle East. While at the same time, Israel has made it clear that it views Iran's expanding influence across the region as an existential threat, pointing to Tehran's support for allied militant groups and its missile capabilities as evidence that the confrontation is part of a long-term strategic struggle. And over the past decade, this shadow conflict has played out through cyber attacks. Assassinations of nuclear scientists, sabotage operations, and airstrikes targeting Iranian-linked infrastructure in countries such as Syria. But now the rhetoric surrounding the latest developments suggests that both sides may be preparing their populations and allies for a more visible phase of confrontation, with Iranian officials emphasizing national resilience and deterrence, while Israeli leaders reiterate their commitment to preventing Iran from gaining strategic dominance or advanced military capabilities that could threaten Israeli security. And this tense environment is further complicated by the role of global powers, particularly the United States, which maintains strong military ties with Israel, while also deploying naval forces in the Persian Gulf to ensure freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, meaning that any miscalculation could quickly escalate beyond a bilateral conflict into a broader international crisis. And the strategic importance of the Strait of Hormuz cannot be overstated, because roughly 20% of the world's petroleum consumption moves through this narrow waterway every day, connecting the oil-rich Gulf states such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and United Arab Emirates, with global markets in Asia, Europe, and North America. So when Iranian officials hint at the possibility of blocking or restricting this route, it immediately captures worldwide attention. And while Tehran has used similar threats in the past during periods of intense sanctions or military pressure, the current context is particularly sensitive because the regional security environment is already fragile, with multiple flashpoints across the Middle East, including conflicts in Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria, that could potentially intertwine with the Iran-Israel rivalry. And according to political observers, Mojtaba Khamenei's speech appears to be carefully designed not only to warn Israel, but also to reinforce Iran's domestic narrative of resistance and strength, portraying the country as a defender against external aggression, while emphasizing that any attack on Iranian territory or interests will be met with a powerful and strategic response. And although it remains unclear exactly what actions Iran might take if tensions escalate further, the mere possibility of disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz has already caused analysts to revisit previous crises in which Iranian naval forces conducted exercises simulating the closure of the strait using mines, missiles, and fast attack boats, tactics that could significantly complicate maritime traffic even if the route were not completely blocked. And on the Israeli side, military planners continue to emphasize intelligence capabilities, missile defense systems, and rapid response strategies designed to counter threats from multiple directions, including long-range missiles, drones, and regional proxy forces that might coordinate with Iran in a wider conflict scenario. And in recent years, Israel has invested heavily in technologies such as advanced air defense systems and cyber warfare capabilities, precisely because the nature of modern conflict in the region increasingly involves hybrid tactics rather than conventional battlefield confrontations. Yet despite these preparations, the biggest concern among international observers is the risk of unintended escalation where a single strike, retaliation, or misinterpreted signal could trigger a chain reaction of military responses that neither side initially intended to expand. And this is why diplomatic channels and back-channel communications remain extremely important, even during periods of intense rhetoric, as regional and global powers attempt to prevent the situation from spiraling into a direct war that could engulf multiple countries, disrupt global trade, and cause humanitarian crises across the region. And as the world follows the latest updates, the central question remains whether the fiery rhetoric surrounding revenge and deterrence will remain part of psychological and political signaling, or whether it will translate into concrete actions that reshape the strategic landscape of the Middle East. Because if the Strait of Hormuz were ever seriously threatened, the consequences would not only affect Iran and Israel, but also energy markets, shipping lanes, and economies across the globe, making this developing story one of the most closely watched geopolitical tensions of the decade. And as analysts continue to interpret statements from Iranian leaders and responses from Israeli officials, the situation remains fluid, uncertain, and potentially transformative for the balance of power in the region and the stability of global energy supply chains, leaving governments, markets, and millions of viewers around the world waiting to see what the next move in this high-stakes geopolitical chess match will be.